founder of two blockchain companies. And one is Uniscore is escrow as a service based on smart contracts, and Tomato is a token automation platform for corporates. And then I'm also the main blogger of Smart Contract Tips, which is an Italian blog focused on best practices in Web3. So you can find me also on LinkedIn. So many years of experience, too many years of experience in IT. And okay, let's skip all this boring personal stuff and let's start on the topic. Web3, probably we are still in a phase of migration from Web 2 to Web 3, and let's say people is not, there is not a mass adoption, and this is not a secret. And it's very difficult for people to understand how to take this Web3 and to take the responsibility to become the real manager of their own assets instead of being, let's say, using services which are holding our assets. And when I say assets, not only money or, tokens, but also anything, also identity, content, everything is managed by Web2 companies. And then one conjecture that I like to do is that probably it's very difficult to have something which is self-custodial, easy to use, and also secure. And is a conjecture, so I don't have any proof. And maybe you guys that you work in abstract accounts, maybe you're saying, okay, but we can break this trilemma. Well, I'm pretty bullish with abstract accounts. Probably it's too early to say that really we solve everything and the mass adoption is just around the corner. Then, one slide from Vanina was Web3 is not safe. Right. I started to work with smart contracts more or less in 2016, and it was the time for the notorious hack of the DAO hack, probably the mother of all the hacks. And in this essay, the author, David Gerd, found that at the time, the smart contract code was really bad. A lot of bugs, every 1,000 lines of code, more than commercial code. And of course, if compared with commercial, non-financial code, and if compared with Microsoft code or NASA code was a complete disaster. So, where do we stand today? Okay, if we look back, 2016, the DAO hack, the vulnerability that was exploited was the reentrancy. So basically, you have a smart contract, the smart contract is connecting to another smart contract to make something, and this one is able to recall again your smart contract. If there is some bug in your logic, of course, the external smart contract can siphon your funds. And this is a very known vulnerability, But still, in 2024, there are more than 1 million USD that were hacked because of this vulnerability in protocols. So that means that, yes, we are getting better. There is a lot of, information, sharing of knowledge, everything, but still, reentrancy is still affecting our protocols in DeFi. And this is not very good, Then, if we look at the, hacks over time, you see that probably we are getting better. That 2022 was the annus horribilis with more than 3 billion hacked, and 23 was much better, but as said by Vanina, 24 is is probably replicating the same figures of 23. So another point to see is that we have more than 8 billion hacked out of a total locked value of 80 billion in DeFi, which is more than 10%. It's not acceptable. What if you connect your bank and you put, your savings and 10% is gone. It's not acceptable for mass adoption to have these numbers, of course. Then if we look at the size of hacks, which is an angle, we can see that the median size is around 5-6 million, except 2023, where there were a lot of small hacks. I don't know which is the reason for that, but now in 2024, we are again having more or less the same situation of 4 million as a median size for hacks. So, and which are the top vectors with top vulnerabilities exploited? But basically here, unfortunately, is not very clear for the resolution, but so trust me, the first one on top is private key hack. And not only is the first with a number of diverse and unknown methods, but it is also in the fifth position for phishing and social engineering. So, what is the insight here? That yes, maybe we are talking about DeFi, we are talking about decentralization, but most of the hacks are caused by private keys. So, is basically a side of centralization, because that means that people in charge with or system in charge of managing funds have been hacked, not protocols themselves, because we are talking about private keys. Imagine if Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto was hacked the private key. Yes, probably would be like a financial crash for a while, because there is 1 million Bitcoins associated with his private key, but not at protocol level. Okay, it would be recovered. In here, instead, we have protocols which are completely depleted by the loss of private keys. And if we look at this diagram, not only in 2024, but all time, the situation is not very different. Private key compromisation is still the first important cause of hack and money loss. So, when I talk of Web3 security to, let's say, normies or IT managers not in Web3, in the Web3 sector, I need to explain the difference between a smart contract, let's say, hack, why smart contracts are different in terms of security with respect to common IT assets. Well, in principle, it is very interesting to consider that if you have things like data corruption in a normal traditional software, the time that, the loss is proportional to the time that you need to recover the data, assuming that you have a backup, of course. In smart contracts, the data corruption is the loss, in the sense that if your smart contract is messing up with the numbers and is a token contract, then, okay, the money is gone, period. Another point interesting is the ransomware, of course. In a traditional software, ransomware, the loss is based on the pay to recover, and the recovery is not even guaranteed. In smart contracts, probably is not applicable that way. But the hacker can be convinced to return the money and to deduct like a bounty. And this is something that happened in the past. Okay, so going back to the idea of audits that were very well introduced by Vanina, something which is very important to understand is that audited doesn't equal secure, because as the master of informatics here, Dijkstra, said once, with program testing and verification, you can check, you can prove the existence of bugs, but not the absence of bugs. And this is very important. And by the way, if you look at the news, you will find a lot, you would find a lot of cases where a well-audited protocol was hacked, and a well-audited by top-notch firm, security firms, was hacked. So it's not so, let's say, it's not enough. And also, because there is also a misunderstanding sometimes in audits. Who is really reading the audits here? Whoever read an audit in this room? I did a couple of times. Also, I wrote a couple of times. But the point is the scope. The scope is very important. This is a case, exemplary case, where the auditors say, okay, yeah, there is this function which is actionable by the company, but it is not in the scope of our audit, so who knows, maybe. And this is an audit, and of course it's completely out of the scope of the auditors, and in this case it was also hacked. Then, bug bounties. Bug bounties are, okay, if audits are the king of security in Web3, probably bug bounties are like the queen. And here I like to take numbers when I can, and this is pretty interesting. These are the total rewards paid, okay, paid, not the maximum bounty available, but total rewards paid by top 10 projects in a platform like Immunify. So it is only a platform, it's not all the ecosystem, but it's pretty interesting. And these are the figures, and okay, it's difficult to read, but then there is like the max is Polygon with almost 6 million, and the median is 85 keys, and that means that in principle, or better, that means from a statistical point of view that half of the projects which are visible in the platform here, and we are talking about 67 records which decided to disclose the data, because not all the projects are disclosing all the data about bounties being paid, and is 85 case, and that means that half of the projects are paying more than 85. So that means if you are a startup and you want to deploy your protocol and you want to launch your bounty, you have to pay your auditors, then we are talking about, you know, money. It's pretty expensive. So there is always a tension between the budget that you have to develop and market your product, and also the budget that you have to use to secure your product. And of course, security is king, yes, but also you need money. And I'm not saying that it must be overlooked, but these are the figures so you can take your insights. Then another trend which is, let's say, going on recently is the on-chain monitoring. That basically, you can audit before you deploy the contract. Then you can also launch a bounty before, but once the contract is launched and deployed and people is already using it, then you can monitor and watching in real time what is happening. There are a number of platforms. Here I'm just citing Forta, but there are also other platforms. And this is pretty interesting. And now monitoring and pausing is becoming like a new best practice. This is a question mark, because I like to put questions rather than answers. And this is a case, very recent, probably, I don't remember, 10 days ago, or more or less. and where the Pendle saved 100 millions because of this practice. So they were watching transactions in real time. They decided to pause the contract. They took some actions, and then in this case, they mitigated the risk. But here there is there is a downside, of course. That means that there is a governance, there is someone in charge to push the button and pause the protocol. And this is completely, let's say, contrary to the spirit of decentralization, because we are talking, imagine if Bitcoin, I like to cite Bitcoin in this case, if there was like someone able to push a button to stop the protocol. Okay, so I know that we need to find like a trade-off between decentralization and probably security, and so in this case we go back to the trilemma. Then I want to conclude talking about layer 2 security. I like to say to people that if you don't pay the gas, then you are the token. This is just a rephrasing of an old motto. If you don't pay the product, you are the product. By the way, I have nothing against layer 2. I'm very bullish, but it is very important to understand which are the limitations of the layer 2 that we are using. I trust that all people in the room know this framework, which is named stages, where basically they worked to define a number of attributes, to define the maturity level of a roll-up. So we are talking about roll-ups, second layers. This is very important because there are attributes like, is the rollup provided with a fraud-proof system? Yes, no. Is the user allowed to opt out if there is an upgrade in the software? Yes, no. So there are a number of checks, and the level of maturity is somehow you can calculate yourself, but there is a site which is L2Bit where this is done, and I think they are also somehow the authors of this framework. And by the way, if you are curious, the Arbitrum rollup and Optimism, they are at the moment stage 1, so not completely decentralized. Conclusions. So, hacks steadily happening. 10%, sorry, there is a typo, 10% of funds affected. Auditing is not enough. Bug bounties and real-time monitoring can be like a good extra goodie to have more security. But you have to make a trade-off between, decentralization and control with real-time monitoring. Then, regarding second layer security, just follow stages and be aware of where you are putting your money. And then I like to conclude with this. Security is never a product. Security is a process. So if you think that your protocol is secure because you buy an audit, then you are completely wrong. It's just like a stamp, but security is a process. Security is about the culture that you have in your company or in your team. And there is a continuous, process of evaluating the risk, taking actions, and repeating. And taking actions, you have also to accept the residual risk, because it is impossible to have risk equal 0, okay? In IT, it's impossible. And, by the way, in Web3, it's even more complicated than stuff, because evaluating, taking actions, and repeating is something that you can apply easily in traditional software. But what if you were talking about a smart contract that in principle it should be immutable? Then it's not immutable. Then you can somehow have like privileged access to make some actions as administrators, you know. So, and this is just to go back to my initial conjecture. Can we have a system which is completely secure, completely decentralized, and also usable? Question mark. I don't have the answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Oh, amazing. Finally, someone. Vanina, go ahead.
So one piece of statistics that I recently noticed is that we, hacks are on the rise. There's no question about it. But we're also getting better at recovering funds from hacks. Do you think that this is giving projects the sense of false security that, even if we get hacked, we'll, try and recover the funds? And how do you think we can keep recovering funds without giving that false sense of security?
Thank you.
Yes, I agree that is a false sense of security, because you can trigger a process where hackers or scammers, they can start just creating this false cycle, false virtual cycle of hacks and partial recoveries. And so I don't know. I think it is very difficult to foresee any kind of evolution of this. And by the way, just to mention another great person, predictions are very hard, especially about the future, and then I don't have an answer either.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. We are already a bit ahead of the schedule, but thank you so much, Davide.